Hey guys, Dr. Trent, and today we want to talk about the topic of insulin resistance. Most people have heard of this terminology, especially in the last few years with many different diets or fads that have kind of come about. But the reason why I want to bring up insulin resistance, and I'll kind of explain what it is and give you a nice simple analogy of how this works. But insulin resistance is basically where you have blood sugar levels that are not being regulated properly. And a lot of people do understand that, yes, this is a huge dietary issue, but I'm also here to tell you there's one thing also that could be you could eat fine and have a really great diet, but still be subjected to insulin resistant problems, which could lead you to many different chronic illnesses or diseases, such as diabetes or metabolic syndrome. Now, the reason I want to talk about insulin resistance is because this is a very important topic, because this is one of two main reasons of all chronic illnesses and diseases today are from either insulin resistance or chronic stress response. And I'm going to do a whole nother video on chronic stress response, but insulin resistance we'll highlight today. So insulin is a pro-inflammatory hormone, okay? Now, the design of the body is perfect. It's fixed genetically. I'm going to explain just what insulin does, okay? So there's several physiological factors that are important or purposes for human metabolism. Among these is when we have an excess of carbohydrates, fats, and proteins. This is where blood sugar gets elevated to a certain degree, and it's assigned to your body. Your brain recognizes it, and you've got more energy substrate coming in than what your body demands through the muscle tissue, the liver, any other tissues or organs that may need this energy source. So what happens is that the body will then take this extra energy source, right, and store it away in the body for future use. This is normally going to be stored away as fat, okay, because fat has a huge energy component, and once broken down, it actually can be utilized a lot better. It's good for a species or for hunter-gatherers. Thinking of us back in our ancestors, it was really great for them in an environment where you didn't know where your next meal was going to come from. And so having that design of the body to store away in times where maybe we had a kill and we gorged ourselves on lots of calories at that time, be stored away for future use. That was great. Absolutely a brilliant design. However, you take this genetic makeup and put it into an environment of today where we have an excess of caloric intake for the average person in America with a deficient caloric expenditure. It becomes absolutely deadly. And we see this because we have huge rates, almost 600 to 700 times, or 600 to 700% increase in diabetes just in the last 20-25 years. So let's kind of give you the analogy of how can you understand insulin resistance and how this plays into where you are, not only dietarily, but also there's one component, which I will get to, that you may be eating really well, but you may be doing this other factor that actually leads you to being a higher risk of becoming insulin resistant. So what happens is when glucose is, again, you take in a lot of food source calorie. Glucose is a primary energy source for the body and the brain. And so when you take a lot in and excess at that time where your body, your muscles, your liver are oversaturated, meaning they don't need any more to get into the muscle for recovery and repair, then it's going to store it away, right? So what happens is the cells, in terms of when we talk about insulin resistant, they become resistant. So that's why it becomes insulin resistant. The cells become resistant. And it all comes back to a cellular level, cellular understanding. Everything that you take in breaks down into components, gets shoved into your cells, and your cells then deliver them to parts of the body for repair, recovery, healing, and nourishment and maintenance, right? So the cells, what happens when they become resistant in this scenario, and we're talking about a chronic scenario, possibly, It can even happen within as little as a couple days, and I'll get to that point in a second. But the cells are trying to protect themselves because, remember, insulin is pro-inflammatory. So a very high insulin effect is very toxic. And so the design that these cells are going to do is protect themselves. And the reason why they're trying to protect themselves is from the effects, right? The effects of this insulin. And why is that? It's because usually it's going to come from a high carbohydrate diet, processed carbohydrates typically, and high processed sugar diets, okay? But also, here's that fact. What's the one other thing, if you're not eating a high processed sugar or carbohydrate diet, that could lead you to be subjective to becoming insulin resistant? Or maybe you're dealing with that now, right? You just don't know why your blood sugar levels can't regulate even though you're eating really well. And that goes back to a movement deficiency syndrome. So what does that mean? You're not moving enough. Most people throughout their week are not moving enough. Studies and research have shown that the majority of people that work out on a regular basis, so we're talking about somewhere between the average recommendation of 30 minutes of moderate to intense exercise daily, it's less than 3% of people who actually are doing that. So it's not only, I'm not talking just about like getting to the gym for resistant training, and resistant training doesn't have to be lifting weights, but using your body against gravity, but a different elements too of movement is aerobic activity. So walking, dancing, biking, like that's an element that you need. Also lifting heavy and moving fast. And these are all components that we go over in our Move by Design workshops. So if you're interested in those, you can let us know. But that's what we teach in our Life by Design office. So when we need to move more and move more intelligently of how the body was designed. Okay, so think of this scenario that you take a cell, let's say it's a big ball, and you've got glucose surrounding it, right? Because you took in that food energy source, right? And then think of a key like, so I'll use my car keys here. So think this key as insulin, and part of the cells, there's actually receptor sites that accept the key, like the key lock, and then they open up and then they let glucose into that cell. So that is how a normal, healthy, insulin sensitive cell would work. Now when you're becoming resistant, basically what happens is these cell receptor sites on the cell itself downregulate, so they become less and less active, or less of them are actually available. So you have less of an opportunity for the insulin to actually open them up and let glucose in. So what happens at that point? Well, then the pancreas, which is responsible for releasing insulin, that hormone, screams louder and louder to the cells, thinking that it can't hear it, so it's going to talk louder, so then they could produce, so it can open up more of those receptor sites, so then the pancreas produces more insulin. And then you can see this is a negative feedback cycle that continues as insulin continues to be pushed into the bloodstream, and glucose or blood sugar levels continue to stay there versus get out of that into the cell and then transported somewhere. So the interesting thing is, I really wanted to note here, is that as little as research shows, as little as 2 days of not being mobile, so not exercising, getting some type of activity, can literally set your body up to a transient insulin resistant response. And the longer that goes, in terms of a lifestyle that you're not eating well and you're not moving well, both of them together or one or the other can set you up for this insulin resistant issue, which then can lead to more chronic issues down the road. So this is hopefully it's been informative for you to understand what insulin resistance is, because it's absolutely deadly in terms of the chronic illness and disease in America, and there's a way to reverse it through dietary means, obviously, but not just dietary alone, but also movement. And when you combine those together, you're going to reverse this, make your body and your cells more insulin sensitive. If this was informative to you and helpful for you, go ahead and give me a like, or share this with somebody that you know. And if you have any questions, go ahead, post them, let me know as well. And also, as always, make it a great day.